What's up guys, my name's Megan and welcome to my channel about how to start your own fashion brand. If you missed the first video, it's an introduction into exactly what this series is going to cover, so I highly recommend clicking on the link below in order to get a nice overview as to what this series entails. So this is going to be step one, which is creating your brand name and logo and just the steps you need to take to help make your brand name. So without further ado, let's get started. Creating your brand name is obviously a super important thing, right? It's going to be the first thing people see when it comes to clicking the link to your website, your social media, or even going into your storefront. So you really need to put a lot of time into figuring out exactly what you want your name to represent and what you want it to be. When I was trying to create my brand name, I felt there were 4 questions that I asked myself that really helped me kind of narrow it down, because coming up with a brand name can be kind of daunting if you don't already have something in mind, which personally, when I started, I had no clue what I wanted to name it. So let me list these 4 questions for you. Number 1, do you want it to be your name? That's a super common thing in today's fashion industry and historically. You have Isabella Marant, Ula Johnson, Michael Kors, everything of that nature, which would be super easy if I could use my name. I just personally don't think my name is anything special when it comes to a brand name. But if that works for you, that's amazing because your work is done. I wish I could have used my name. Second question you can ask yourself is, does it have sentimental meaning? Do you have maybe something that really you identify with in your past that you want to name it? Once again, mine personally doesn't have any sentimental meaning, which is kind of rare. That's definitely one of the great questions to ask yourselves, because that also helps narrow it down into exactly what maybe a word you want to use, or just exactly what memory you want to think of when you read your brand name. That way it's special to you, because at the end of the day it is your brand. Third question was, what language do you want it to be in? So for example, there's brands like Avec La Fille that is in French for like more of the Parisian vibe that it is. It could be a simple word, but when it's in another language, it sounds way more beautiful than when it's in English. So that's a great question to ask yourself, because then that also opens up a whole new dictionary basically when it comes to how it's pronounced. The fourth and final question I asked myself is, how many words do you want your brand to be? Right? So there's typically either a single name brand or a brand with 2 names. So for example, you have Gucci, Versace, Frame. All of those are simple single word brands, which I personally really like, which I know is contradictory given my brand is 2 words, but it kind of helps narrow it down, right? It's just like the simple outlines as to what you want your brand name to be. More aesthetic wise is kind of what helped me narrow it down. So for example, my brand name is Carter June, right? And I've always loved the name June. I heard it one time about 5 years ago and I've been obsessed with it ever since. So I kind of knew I wanted the name June to be included in my brand name, but I didn't exactly want it to just be June. The reason behind that is just a little tip and trick from me, is I wanted something unique enough that if you were to type into Google this brand name, it would be one of the only things that come up. So like imagine if my brand name was June. Type that into Google, there's no way people are going to find the brand unless I become like a giant chain. So I spent probably a week every day, all day, searching random names. I actually found out that one of my family friends is pregnant, and she was like, I'm gonna name her Carter. It was as simple as that. I was like, Carter June, I like it. Another big factor that played in for me is, once again, I kind of mentioned this before, I want you to be able to Google Carter June and something else doesn't come up. I want people to very easily find the brand, that it is something that wouldn't be misspelled to potentially not be able to find the website. And social media also was a big thing for me. Another thing, this is just like nitpicky for me personally, I wanted to check also social media tags to make sure that usernames and pages weren't taken for whatever brand name I decided, because I just wanted it to be at Carter June or at Carter June Official. Highly recommend doing that and really putting in the time to make sure that your brand name is unique and it'd be easy to find. So once you get your brand name, the next part is creating your logo. So this is really exciting. I've also had experience with helping startup brands create their logos, packaging, things of that nature. So I personally created my brand logo myself. But there are so many options for you to be able to reach out to graphic designers and things of that nature. The way that I would go about that, if you're balling on a budget, is to reach out to maybe a local graphic designer or someone that would also benefit from being able to add your logo to their portfolio. Because then you're also helping out someone that is kind of where you're at in your career, you know? Once again, there's multiple questions you need to ask yourself when going over your logo, right? So I kind of took inspiration from Reformation, Frame, Stod. I like the simplicity. I've kind of always decided that I want to have a simple minimalistic logo. What I found was the most helpful is just typing into Google Images and being like brand logos in order to kind of see what is all out there. And you can go through the list of like, okay, do you want it to be an image? So like, for example, Lacoste, right? Has the little alligator. You look at that alligator, you know it's Lacoste, right? But it also has the separate Lacoste logo. So I decided I would like to have a normal rectangular logo, because things to consider are your website, your Instagram, your Facebook, right? So if you have the header on the page, same like with my YouTube channel, right? There's gonna be that header on my channel that says Carter June. And then on most social medias, you're gonna have the little circle that you need to put your logo in. I went ahead and made both. But let's take a step back. The amount of fonts out there are disgusting. There are so many fonts you can choose from. I recommend narrowing it down based on font category. Do you want simple straight? Do you want sans serif? Do you want serif? Do you want cursive? Do you want maybe a three-dimensional, more graphic font? That will really help you when searching, because Lord knows I went through and clicked 1,000 different minimalistic fonts. It took some time, but it's worth taking the time on, right? Because once you do it, you're stuck with it. And I hope you're happily stuck with it, obviously. So what I did is I used Illustrator, and you can easily go to Google and look at one of those, like defont.com, or there's a million other font websites where it's free download into Illustrator. You can type in your brand name, for example, and it previews it as you go down the Google page, so you can see what it looks like, right? And then you can download it and upload it into Illustrator and make it your own vector file and be able to play with it. Once you narrow it down, you can go ahead and then decide, all right, do I want any kind of icon in my logo? So I decided, as you can see, it's Carter, and then there's a little floral logo, and then there's June. I decided I want to incorporate the flower into it because I just think it makes it more feminine, which is what Carter June is all about, and it just added more to it, but in a good minimalistic way. So how did I come up with the flower? What I highly recommend, if you want some kind of logo and you haven't already drawn it yourself, or you don't have a graphic designer like me, I went to Shutterstock, which I know sounds kind of juvenile, makes you think of high school when you had to go to Shutterstock to get random pictures for the yearbook, but they have so many great options that you can download for free as a vector file and be able to drop it into Illustrator. So I went through a ton of minimalistic floral line drawings because I knew that was kind of what I wanted to do. You can go ahead and just search Shutterstock like crazy and be able to find exactly what you want, or at least something similar that you could then alter in Illustrator. It's all in the details. I know it sounds really excessive, but it's so important to get your logo right. Now I need a circle emblem because I just think that's so important to really get that nailed down for social media, because in today's day and age, social media is really the best free marketing you could possibly do for your brand. I went ahead and made my own C and J logo, as you can see right here. Isn't it cute? I decided I wanted the C and J to be a different font than the Carter June, partially because I knew I wanted to lay it out how I have it, and the small minimalistic font just didn't really do much for it. So what I did is I downloaded a font, and then I actually, in Illustrator, I created outlines around it and pretty much tweaked it to be my own font and to have its own little details. So this font technically doesn't exist, which also just feels really cool because it truly is unique to Carter June. So now that you have your rectangular logo and your circular logo, you're set, right? You're good for all platforms, you're good for your website, it's good for packaging, all those kinds of things. That's the end of step one, creating your brand name and logo. I really hope this helped at least get the wheels turning and give you a nice place to start, because I know it can be really overwhelming when you don't already have a name in mind. So please let me know if you guys have any other questions. Come up with a great name. And yeah, till next time, guys. Bye.